And that's some of what I can see from here. I know that they've been active with these buckets trying to pour water over her, make sure that she's cool and wet. This is an awfully hot day. Springer's luck, I guess, that she got one of the hottest days of the year, that she gets to have to be out of the water for some time here. But she's fine. It looks from here like they're keeping her wet and comfortable and just trying to soothe her. They rub her a lot to soothe her. I'm sure Kelly can probably comment more on that, about why that is so soothing to the whales.
Yeah, Liz, in fact, I was also going to guess that they slacked the cable there for a moment, probably to get some access to the side of her body for skin samples. With the sling over her body, it might be difficult to get to some of those infected areas that were along the side and the dorsal fin, behind the pectoral and down her sides. So that might be that guess. But as Liz was commenting, these killer whales are very tactile animals, so they do enjoy the touch of other whales. And of course, without the whales around, the touch of the humans, the scratching, the touching. So all of that is really good for her, to soothe her, to calm her in this scenario. And it looks like she's only moments away from actually being put back into the water, and I think that's also going to be very good for her once we get her back in the water, because even if you keep her wet, at some point her weight is going to begin to weigh upon her. She's got to be put back in the water where she's in a neutral buoyant environment. So even though she's a little over 1,000 pounds, that's 1,000 pounds that's weighing on her body at this moment.
And we should... Kelly, I don't know if you can hear me. Kathy, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
One of the things that Dr. Bob Huff told us this morning, he's the from the BC Aquarium, was that he thought that her skin disease or condition, whatever it may be, had actually worsened when he saw her yesterday, and he was quite concerned about that. So perhaps Kelly is right that they are trying to quickly take some skin samples here to see if they can begin treating her with something that might help her, if indeed that is an infectious condition. Dr. Huff said he wasn't sure if it was an infection, but was obviously concerned that it was, and thought when he saw her yesterday and observed that perhaps she'd lost some weight, he also felt that the skin condition was slowly worsening, he said.
Right. The concern is that this could be a fungal infection. Some vets have discussed the idea that this could be an external infection working its way into the lungs and internal systems. Others have said that it may be coming from inside out. I'm going to be hopeful that this is just a fungal infection on the outside, an external thing that can be dealt with in the next few weeks. And I think also if we look back historically at KOMO, once we remove that animal from the Mexico facility and put him into a cold water environment in Newport, Oregon, that skin infection that he had, the warts on his pectoral fin, they went away within 6 months. So again, if we can get her into a better water environment and sustain her with good solid foods, that may go away rather quickly.
Kelly, this is Tracy up in Air 4. Let me ask you a quick question. I know one of the early concerns was that she may have some sort of genetic disorder that may be the reason why her Orca pod booted her out, perhaps. And originally they took some of those blood samples and they thought, well, maybe that's indicated no, that there was no genetic disorder. But I know that the vet yesterday, or 2 days ago, the National Marine Fisheries Service marine mammal vet from DC said that they have not yet ruled out a genetic condition still at this point in time, and so they hope to further isolate whether or not that in fact might be the case. What would that mean, and what might it entail?
Tracy, maybe I could just interrupt here for a moment, because we are just getting some video in that we want to show as we're waiting for the whale to be lifted off the barge. This is video, and it is coming to you raw. We have not had a chance to really look and edit this video, but it's just come from the barge as Springer was lifted out of the water and onto that barge. This is from a camera that was right on the rescue boat there, and you can see it's moving around quite a bit. Again, this is just coming to us. This is the first we've seen.
That's Jeff Foster on the sling.
That's Jeff Foster there, the one who was so involved with the the movement of KOMO from Oregon to Iceland, and he was the head researcher, the head of the rescue team there. Where this is just after they obviously got the sling around the whale. The rescue team members in the water there, and now they're lifting the whale. Looks like
there she is.
Yeah, you see
that's
her
also
in there.
Jen Shore on the right there in the boat, and Dr. McBain in the background. It looks basically now they're just securing the straps tight so that there's no looseness, so while they're lifting her out of the water, she doesn't fall out or roll out. So basically, this is just the final moments of securing the straps before lifting her up.
And she really doesn't look to be struggling at all from this vantage point. But then again, she's being held so tightly in there, she doesn't really maybe realizes that it wouldn't do her any good.
Well, interestingly enough, historically, having spoken with Ted Griffin and others that have in the past captured whales, once a killer whale is enclosed in a net or pen, they don't fight back. It's actually, you would cause more harm. The whale would harm itself by thrashing around a lot. So in fact, they go very docile, and that's been historically all along that killer whales, once put into this confined area, will in essence just basically calm down and relax.
Well, we apologize for the video again. I told it just was coming in via satellite from our people over there in the Kitsap County area, but once we get a chance to better look at that and edit it, we'll show you more a little later. But again, this is a live picture looking down, taking a little longer perhaps than we anticipated to get the whale off that barge and into that pen. Again, this is a small pen. The idea is that once she's in there, once they're able to give her some fish and get her comfortable, she'll move into a little bit larger pen before she's eventually moved up to a Vancouver Island area. And maybe we could talk, Kelly, a little bit about what's going to happen once they get her up there.
Oh, surely. The goal is, again, get this animal healthy, get that skin condition under control, then transfer her to a larger enclosed bay up off Hansen Island in the northern end of Vancouver Island in time for early July, when the family that she is related to is going to enter for the season. The whale should be around for about all of July and August. So the goal here is to get this animal healthy as fast as possible, transferred as quickly and safely as possible to 350 miles north of here into the north end of Vancouver Island in time for the family's return, where we would ultimately reunite her with her family. Now, there was also a question on this, the skin condition and why she may have left the family. I'm not as convinced necessarily of a genetic disorder or that she was booted. In some cases, if an animal does get sick, it can fall behind the rest of the pod. And in her case, in January and February, we were noting as observers for the National Marine Fisheries Service Observers Program there that we had phlegm from her blowhole. She, in fact, was even more emaciated almost in January than she even looked in March. And perhaps she had a lung infection, and that may have been the cause of her falling behind and losing track of the family. And then once you're a 1.5-year-old killer whale and you don't know where the rest of the family is, it's the middle of winter now, you wander the inland passages and come down into southern Puget Sound and select Vashon Island as your home, perhaps.
And we'll be able to know really very quickly the status of her health and,
That's right.
and her condition.
That's right. We should see some samples within probably even tomorrow, and some of them may take a few days, but I think that within the week, the veterinarians at and the National Marine Fisheries Service agents should be able to inform us as to the status of many of these conditions that we've only been guessing on or making observations from a distance on over the past 5 months.
And Tracy, as you mentioned, once they get Springer down into that pen, they're going to start playing sounds of her family unit from the Canadian waters.
Well, it's really, in so many ways, this really is an historic situation to see unfold before us. What an amazing front row seat we have to this being played out before us. And yeah, this is a story that I think has touched so many hearts throughout, not just Puget Sound and the Northwest, but really people across the country. About a story about this little orphaned orca who, in spite of all the odds, managed to still make a living here in Puget Sound all on her own at such a young age. But she still has that family connection, and so that's the goal, as Kelly mentioned, is to get her reunited ultimately with her Canadian orca pod. And they have hydrophones in the water. I think Kelly mentioned Dr. Paul Spong's research facility up off of Johnstone Strait. They have been monitoring and taping the sounds and the language of the northern resident orca community, three pod communities up there for years now. And so they have very good quality recordings of what her family sounds like and the language that they speak. And so they are going to be transmitting those into the net pen where she'll be residing for the next week or two, and refamiliarizing with her with the sounds of her infancy, I guess you could say.
And Liz Roca on the ground there at Manchester, it's going to take a little getting used to for that whale. As we saw when we first came to you at the beginning of this operation, a giant ferry boat passed by there within, it didn't look like it was very far away.
It wasn't, Kathy. I'll tell you, this morning, that's one of the high-speed passenger ferries. This morning, that ferry took off out of here, but I noticed when it passed by as Springer's barge was approaching her dock and pen there, that the ferry really slowed down and sort of crept by. One of the things they told us at the briefing this morning was that they noticed yesterday that Springer was very sensitive, very reactive to any sounds in the water, any additional sounds she may not be used to, any additional boats in the area. And in fact, they had decided this morning at the outset that what they would do was have a 1,000-yard zone around the rescue area because she was so sensitive to these extra noises. I would like to ask Kelly, I was so fascinated to see how easily she appeared to go into the tail rope, to go into the sling and onto the boat. How big of a role, Kelly, did trust play here? Because Jeff Foster and others have been out with her day after day, rubbing her, getting to know her, getting her to know them. How big of a role did trust, for her anyway, play in getting her on that boat safely?
And as you answer that, I just want to mention that this is, again, video taken earlier from the actual rescue boat as the operation got underway.
Yeah, and Liz, I would say trust is the key. Jeff's absolutely right, and working in the wild population for the past 27 years myself, I understand that the only way to have a good encounter with whales is to have them trust you as much as you learn to trust them. And so what Jeff and his team were doing was engaging that animal in a very friendly, gentle fashion, scratching its back, giving it pleasure so that it would relax and learn to trust both the vessel. That's another key, is use the same vessel, the same people, over and over. The routines give that animal that sense of security and trust, and that's what ultimately made this such a successful capture in this case, is that they really did work for the past week on getting that baby whale's trust.
But it really is a thin line, because even though you want the whale to trust you, you don't want the whale to be too used to people, as we see it being lifted out of the water here.
You know, and in fact, Kathy, ultimately that is going to be the challenge, is that, you know, we've pushed the line now. We've got a lot of human engagement and a lot of contact, and we're going to now have to turn the table and start to deprive her of that same comfort and same contact. But ultimately, when we put her back into her family pod, say a month from now or 3 weeks from now or whatever that goal is, that's really where she will belong. She will not need the human contact. And it's really critical that she doesn't remember too much of the human time, that she really does get back with family and regain and relearn the rules of being a killer whale again. Well, the whale getting some very intense human time right now, as she's been taken off that foam bed that was used to transport her in the sling. Again, the veterinarians working around her, as you mentioned, getting skin, blood, every kind of sample that will then be taken very quickly, turned around to see exactly what kind of treatment this whale needs. But the whale will be, we're assuming any moment, lifted into that net pen there, where she will be kept and until she's moved into a little bit bigger one for the eventual move to Vancouver Island. Tracy, does it look like they're getting close to making the move here?
Actually, Kathleen, no, it doesn't. It looks like they're taking this opportunity, while they already have her basically immobilized, to make as much use of their time as they possibly can. And I have to suspicion that what they're doing is making sure that they have every last sample that they can think that they might need, because what they can do now will minimize the amount of time they have to do really close, hands-on type of medical examinations once they get her into the water. Now, if you'll see at the bottom part of your screen, there are 2 divers now in the water, so maybe inside the pen, so perhaps that means that we are getting a little bit closer, and they're starting to move away from Springer now in the pen.
They are going into the water now.
Oh, and we can see Jeff Foster up there at the top, so apparently they are getting ready to lift that sling up again.
All right, well, stay with us.
One of the things that was mentioned, you were talking about their affinity, or her affinity to humans now, and that may be a problem for her later. One of the things that Jeff Foster said the other day was that the actual capture itself, this event that's happening right now, may make her averse to humans. So, in fact, this extreme closeness now may make her more wary of getting near humans, which would be a great thing to happen.
And now she's headed off that barge and into the water with that Jeff Foster, the head of the rescue team, on top of the sling. You see the pectoral fin sticking out there as Springer is very gently but deftly lifted into her new temporary home. The end of months of debate and discussion and all kind of angst about what should happen with this young whale. Should she be left alone? Who would pay for this $500,000 rescue? We know the federal government came through with about half the money, but now Orca conservation groups have come together really for the first time in history, working with these federal agencies to raise the rest of the money to make sure that this whale is reunited with her family and taken basically out of harm's way. As much fun as it's been for people of Puget Sound to see an orca and really the orca, the icon of the Pacific Northwest, something that we've all come to know and love. Springer now laid into the water.
There she goes.
And basically they had just pulled the
yeah, at this point draped the sling down and let her swim freely from it, allowing her to move away, then pull the sling away from it. Now the divers and the whale are in the water.
She looks to be okay from what you can see, Tracy?
As far as I can tell, she appears to do just fine. She is moving around the pen a little bit, as near as we can tell. It's difficult to tell from the vantage point that I have. My screen here is quite small, but yeah, you can see her as well as I can, Kathy. Yeah. She seems to be, the divers don't seem to be reacting with concern.
I would suspect
she's obviously testing out the sides of that net pen. Now for the first time in about a little over an hour's period of time, she is free from those tight constraints, and she's realizing that her world has gotten much, much smaller than it has been over the past, well, as long as she's been alive. So that's one of the things that they also expected, is that she would test the limits of her pen. She would check it out. We know that this is a very curious animal, and so she'll definitely check it out. She is underneath those tarps that have been laid over the top of that pen, which would also be, and Kelly, you may be able to add a little bit here, but I think that would be a rather natural reaction for any animal, for any wild animal, is to go to the place where she has the least sense of being seen, a place where she can kind of hide in this very strange environment. Kelly?
Right, not only just the cover of the shadow, but also notice she's at the farthest end of the pool away from the humans.
And
so
the purpose of the humans in the water with her right now is purely precautionary. I mean,
they need to be standing by in case there's any concern if the animal is going to entangle herself. But no doubt they're also standing back as much as possible to allow her a comfort zone in such a small enclosed area. But because there doesn't seem to be any reaction from the divers, I would suspect that everything's going pretty well. She's no doubt under the net there and looking around in her environment. But you know, and only an hour in a sling and on the foam was probably not too bad of a period of time. And she is a younger whale. Much larger whales have certainly spent much larger amounts of time. KOMO flying all the way to Iceland in a box in foam and water. So, you know, clearly this is only an hour for a very young female killer whale.
All right, with the successful end of this next phase of the operation, we want to wrap things up here. A couple of program notes we want to tell you about. We have a hockey game starting at 5 o'clock tonight, so we're going to be on the air about 10 minutes till 5. We'll bring you the very latest on the rescue operation, make sure we bring you up to date on how the whale is doing. But for now, Kelly, thank you so much for your vantage point.